I know you told your friend you're not okay, and tell me what's wrong and why you never said you felt that way. And guess you're trying to stay strong and fake a smile until I look away. But I've known you too long, it hurts to watch your blue eyes fade to gray as you fade away, as you fade away.
Yeah, I'm about to fade away, cause every time I wake up I feel like it's Monday. Something's going wrong with all the chemicals up in my brain. All of a sudden I don't look at anything the same way. Got a buildup of my thoughts sitting in an ashtray. I'm sorry that I'm so inconvenient, okay. Just let me be me and I'll stay out of your way. I can see the way you look at me, I'm such a disgrace. I never really asked to be brought into this place. You wanna love me? Well then baby I have a taste. All the highs and the lows, no you'll never be the same. I don't really wanna hurt you but I can't control the pain. If you're sticking by my side maybe we could be okay. Okay, maybe you could be the change I need today. I promise that I've never felt this way. I really hope that you will choose to stay through all the pain.
I know you told your friend you're not okay, and tell me what's wrong and why you never said you felt that way. And guess you're trying to stay strong and fake a smile until I look away.
About to get the live stream started in a second. Switch over. myself up here. Welcome to the live stream. We're doing today how to build and choose computer components for your build. I'm going to go over all the components that you're going to need, as well as everything down to even the keyboard, mouse, and monitor. And hopefully what we've got going on today, I'm just going to send out a little quick poll asking, have you ever built a PC? I want to know, yes, no, thinking about it. And that poll is going to run throughout the entire live stream, so feel free to answer at any time. So I'm going to go over each section. Each section is going to be a little bit complicated because you're talking about a major machine. You're talking about a desktop computer. By the way, this is not for picking out laptop computers, but you can kind of follow the same spec order. It's just the only difference is that you're going to be finding yourself kind of limited compared to a desktop. Desktops, you have more options. The more options you have, the more confusing it gets a little bit, but really what we're going to go over is every section, and in every section I'm going to show you how to purchase it, where to purchase it, figuring out pricing and other stuff like that. So let me flip over to the other screen, which is right now, not yet, hold on one second. We're going to open up this. Over here. Wow, that's no. Exit that. Okay, so I'm going to bring a window over here for our browser, and I'm going to put myself up there. And what we're going to talk about are a few different things. Let me just flip back over to me for a second or two. So what we're really going to go through is each component. And I'm going to go through the components that you should start with as you go through each section so you can actually get to a complete build. You can build out of order if you want, but this is how I build a machine because it makes the most sense because it relies on certain components to be matching. There are a lot of sites out there that will do this matching for you. PC Part Picker is one that we use very often if you want to look at some sort of compatibility. The only problem with PC Part Picker is that basically PC Part Picker only does really high-end parts. The lower-end parts are not as viewable, I would put it that way. They are compatibility checked, but for whatever reason, whenever I go to PC Part Picker, they really want you to choose the more expensive option. You don't always have to do that. So if you go through this tutorial, you'll be able to learn directly how to get the correct parts for the right build that you need. And by the way, it is really customizable to you. It really depends on what you are doing with your system, what you're going to do in the future with your system, and the upgradability of that system. So let's start with the CPU first, and let me flip back over to this screen. And what we're going to do is I'm going to use MicroCenter right now for our basic one, but you could also use NewEgg or Amazon. Just one little word of advice about Amazon. Amazon is not really a part builder. It is, you know, a variety of products that they sell. They don't actually sell directly computer components. What they're doing is they're selling computer components, but not searchable enough for really building an entire system. That's why I recommend you go to MicroCenter or you go to NewEgg's website for, you know, looking those parts up. So I'm going to go to MicroCenter for now, just for the fact that it happens to be local to us. We're not in New Jersey. I don't know what that's going on. Let's just change this to our zip code here. You would change it to yours. Hopefully you have a MicroCenter around you. If you don't, again, you could use NewEgg. And I'm going to show you guys a NewEgg as well. So let me just hit find my store. Oh, it's right here. Shop this store, Westbury. That makes sense. Okay, so I'm going to also open NewEgg as well. All of these links will be down in the description of like where they are, what companies to use. Again, you could also use Amazon, but you're going to have a really hard time with Amazon because there's no way to drill down a product. So you're going to have a little bit more of a difficult time finding those products. You're going to have to go more to the main manufacturer's websites, get model numbers and stuff like that. That actually is more difficult than just going to the selection that's already there for you. So what do you start with first? The first thing we're going to start with is the CPU. So we're going to go to PC parts. We're going to go to processors. I'm going to choose an AMD processor for today, but you could also choose Intel. Intel might be a little less expensive if you want to do if you want to do onboard graphics and you want to eliminate graphics at all. If you're doing something very simple, like a very simple machine, and you're doing onboard graphics, you really don't need an AMD processor. You'll probably pay more for it compared to an Intel. But let's do AMD anyway, just because the build that I'm going to do is going to have a graphic card. But the build that you would normally do if you're not using a graphic card, if you're not gaming, if you're not doing like AutoCAD or some sort of like three-dimensional rendering or anything really high-end, then you could avoid that and you can go save some money and go towards more processor with built-in graphics. So on here, they're going to have a lot of choices. It's going to filter by the most popular. Now, normally this is okay, but if you're looking for a medium to a high-end system, this is probably fine. If you're going for the least expensive system, then you're gonna have to go sort by low to high price. Whenever you go too far below the regular recommended most popular searches, you're going to have a harder time building the system also, because you're gonna have to find motherboards, RAM, etc. that are older and may take a little bit more finessing to figure out what you want to use for those certain products. So I recommend stick to something in the current generations. With AMD right now, I think this is 5000 series, if I remember correctly. Let me just look it up really quick. 500X, yeah, it's the most current series. Now, usually the most popular ones are going to be the most current series. You're not going to have to really worry about like going any other direction. Now, if you sort this by low to high, you're going to get the oldest processor probably around. Yeah, you're talking, you know, the Renoir, sorry, processor. You can actually go all the way back to that. That's going to be an older, you know, probably second gen or third gen processor. I wouldn't go this method unless you're really trying to save money. My personal opinion, go with something in the medium price, especially if it's your first build. I would definitely not go too low of a price. I just go by most popular here. I would probably go in the Ryzen 5 series. If you go down to the Ryzen 3 series, there are options there. By the way, with Intel, it's kind of the same thing. The only difference is Intel's using i3, i5, i7, i9. Ryzen is using Ryzen 3, Ryzen 5, Ryzen 7, Ryzen 9. They kind of fit into the same categories. Not 100%. I mean, if you really want to like be very nitpicky, you can actually take a look at the exact specs of each processor and, you know, dribble it down to that to saying which one you would choose over the other one. But to keep things simple, they usually are in about the same range. So if you have like an i3, it's going to be close to kind of like a Ryzen 3. If you have an i5, it's going to be kind of like a Ryzen 5. An Intel i7 will be kind of like a Ryzen 7, and an i9 will be kind of like a Ryzen 9 version of the processor. And again, it's not perfect. It's not an exact match-to-match, apples-to-apples comparison. This is still two different types of companies. So, but you have to choose a processor first to determine your motherboard and a lot of other things. So like your motherboard, then your RAM, then your hard drive, your GPU, etc. Now, the things that really make a big difference is which processor should you go with. Now, nowadays, DDR4 is available on both Ryzen and Intel. DDR5 is currently only available on Intel until AMD releases their newer processor out within the next few months. So my recommendation, I don't really recommend DDR5 at the current time of this filming, but you can do DDR5, but you will have to use Intel at that point. So that will decide your factor of what you're doing. But that's why I say decide with your processor first, because then it determines everything else that's falling below it. Most things. It's not going to determine your case. It's not going to determine your graphic card. You can mix and match graphic card, case, and all this other stuff down the line. So you don't have to worry about those. But that's why I like to choose the processor first, just to get an idea of which type of motherboard I'm going to be using and what type of RAM I'm going to be using. So let's go with the Ryzen 5 5600X. And let's say, okay, I want this at 179. I'm going to make a, let's just add it to the cart. And what you're going to do is you're going to find the next part, which is going to be your motherboard. So to figure out what type of motherboard you need, in this case, MicroCenter has it listed right in the top of the category here as AM4. So your AM4 is the socket type that you're going to have to pick for your motherboard. In short, AMD, it's AM4, and then the next one's going to be AM5. With Intel, it's going to be an LGA socket. So you're going to have something like LGA 1200 or 1600, whatever it is. It'll actually tell you right in the system. So I'm going to open up another tab here just to show Intel's side of items. Intel processors. If you chose Intel processors, let's say what are we doing? A Ryzen 5, so we can look for an i5. Yeah, i5 is a little more expensive in this case, but I think this one has built-in graphics. Probably. Yeah, it has built-in graphics, where AMD doesn't have a built-in graphics for this price. So it's a little cheaper on the AMD side because they know that you have to buy a graphic card. Where in this case, you could go with a motherboard without a graphic card for something in an i5. Most Intel has built-in graphics. So if you're not going to use a graphic card at all, go with Intel. You'll probably save some dollars because once you get down the path where we're going now, a graphic card's going to be more than the difference that you're paying here. So again, it really depends on what your situation is. But if you look at this, the main point is what you're looking for is the LGA 1700 series is for what type of socket you're going to be using. So at that point, the LGA 1700 would be what you're looking for a motherboard. The motherboards for Intel are going to be a little bit more expensive. And the reason why they're more expensive is because the processor is built a little bit differently. There are no pins on an LGA socket. The pins are actually on the opposite side, not on the CPU, but it's on the motherboard itself. So when you close that bracket over, all the pins push up into the processor. So the processor actually doesn't have pins, it just has these little contact points instead, which is basically what those little pin pads push onto, and that attaches to the processor. Where AMD, if you look at it, it has all these little pins, and those little pins save cost because the motherboard doesn't have to be as advanced. It could use a cheaper socket build for that to work. Now, one little word of advice going forward, the new version of AMD AM5, which should be rolling out shortly, that will be the reverse. So there's not going to be any more pins. They're going to be going over to more of a, pinless CPU, and it's going to be more towards the motherboard. It's just a new future way of design. Again, does it really matter too much? Not really on the aspect of everything else. For you guys building the machine, it doesn't really make much of a difference as long as you're careful either way, putting the processor into the actual socket. So moving on, AMD, we're going to go with this. We're going to go say, okay, we have a Ryzen 5 5600. It has an AM4 socket. So now we got to look up a motherboard that matches this. So we're going to go to PC parts. We're going to go to AMD motherboards. And we're going to find and select AM4 if it isn't already selected. That's Ryzen. Okay, they don't say AM4. This is one of those weird things where it just says Ryzen. So we're going to check off Ryzen. The socket type is AM4 though. So if you're on NewEgg, let's say as an example, you would have to choose a motherboard. Go AMD motherboards. You would have to say AM4. This is the more proper way of doing things because that's the socket type. So if you apply that, it'll drill down with every AM4 motherboard available. Now, if you've noticed, the most popular on here is going to be over $100 for a motherboard. Anytime you spend, the amount of budget that you should be spending on really depends on the type of system you're doing, and it's the type of I/O you need. And by I/O, I mean interface, basically like all of your peripherals, like your graphics that are going to have to be used, your keyboards and mice, or any other types of peripherals that you need to connect. Your motherboard really determines that. Plus, there's one little extra that motherboard is determined by, and that is by longevity of the motherboard and running of the motherboard. So in other words, some motherboards are designed a little bit better to handle 24/7 operation, and then some motherboards are only made to be, you know, turned on once in a while you're doing work, and then you shut them off at the end of the day. If you're looking at something like that, if you're looking at something that's going to run constantly, you would want to spend a little bit more money on your motherboard. You want to get something that's a little bit more heavy duty, but you're also going to have to deal with something that's probably a little bit bigger. There's going to be more traces. They're going to be a big, thicker board. If you're going more gaming aspect or more AutoCAD or anything like that, I'd recommend that you get a little bit beefier motherboard just so that you can handle more power through the graphic, you know, slot itself without having too many issues. Now, there is a standard amount of power that does go through there, but I'm talking about longevity of the board. In other words, how long that power can stay pushed through that port without it, you know, causing a problem or overheating or having other issues. So expect to spend about usually $100 to $200 here in this category if you want something really good. Anything sub under $100, you don't want to be using that machine 24/7 because there's going to be some problem. You're going to have some problems down the road. I'm not going to say when it's going to have a problem, but you know it'll eventually have a problem. So at this point, I'm going to go and choose. I'm going to go sort this by low to high just to see what's going on and see what the lowest motherboard available is. MicroCenter doesn't have everything in stock. If you've noticed, it is, yeah, they have like $60 motherboards in stock. Now, NewEgg probably will have something cheaper available. Yeah. The reason why NewEgg would have something cheaper is because NewEgg also has different vendors. So if you noticed here, this one's shipped by NewEgg right here. This one is shipped by Dodo DIY store. Who knows who that is? So, you know, be careful if you're going to buy on NewEgg because there are other vendors. MicroCenter, when you purchase from them, you're only buying from MicroCenter. So the warranty is the same, everything's the same. If you're unsure, buy from MicroCenter. I don't think you can actually, I don't think they do shipping. So if you have the only choice of NewEgg, then just be careful, and then you want to look for the ones that says shipped by NewEgg. You could also filter on NewEgg to say shipped by NewEgg only, and then at that point, you get this, you're guaranteed to have it purchased by NewEgg at that point. Now, NewEgg does have cheaper motherboards. That's the only benefit compared to MicroCenter. MicroCenter usually only carries a certain amount. They're a little bit less. MicroCenter's a little bit smaller than I think NewEgg in the aspect of that. Warehouse-wise and stock-wise, it's a little cheaper for NewEgg to be able to handle all that. Now, if we go back to here, you know, $62, let's just do an example motherboard. Again, this is a sub $100 motherboard, so we're not expecting many features on here, but we're going to click on this anyway. And if you guys noticed, you can get nice zoomed in photos to take a look at the actual motherboard itself, or you can go down to the specs area and figure this all out. What I'm going to be looking for basically is right here, which is the M.2 socket, which it says an Ultra M.2 right there below it. Then I know that I can use an M.2 drive. I could also use SATA because it has SATA. Now, if you want to look through the specs for this, this will be down in the specs right here under SATA Express, which is weird. But it says M.2 type, and you can see that it has all different types. The standard that you're looking for is 2280 at the current time. That is the proper size that most M.2s are. So as long as it has 2280, you could choose an M.2 hard drive. Now, this is what you're going to be choosing the hard drive and RAM next, so that's why I'm bringing this up, is that basically the M.2 port, making sure that that motherboard has everything that you need before you proceed forward. You don't want to have to go changing your motherboard midway while you're actually building a machine. Because if you go to do that, you're going to have to start kind of over on a lot of stuff. You got to then recheck all the compatibility. Your motherboard, as it kind of sounds, it's the mother of the entire system. So everything has to connect into that. You know, so you got to make sure that if when you go to choose this, You gotta make sure your CPU, your RAM, your hard drive, everything connects into this. So you gotta make sure everything keeps up to date with this. What I usually do during a build like this, I would leave this screen here up, and I'll create another tab and continue building parts, because then I can come back to this screen to reference all the specs of the motherboard, so I can know what type of RAM I'm going to have to choose, what type of hard drive I'm going to have to choose. So let's go with this board. I'm going to hit reserve on this right now just to put it in the cart so we can get a full total by the end. Any day now. There it goes. All right, so we hit back, and then I'm going to just keep this open. I'm going to pop another tab. We're going to put this over here just so that we have it ready to go. And we go to MicroCenter here. We go again. We go to the parts. We're going to find the next item. So in other words, we're going to do, the next item is going to be up, which is RAM. I'm looking over to my notes so that I keep myself in order, but this will be in the description as well so you guys can know. When you're in RAM, you're just going to scroll down to the specs area again. You're going to find the RAM, which says memory type, which is RAM, okay? Which I kind of disagree with this. It should be labeled RAM, not really memory type, because memory is also storage, technically speaking. So anyway, DDR4, what I usually do is I try to find the highest one first. In this case, it's DDR4 3200 megahertz. So that's the most highest supported memory without overclocking, I think. Let me double check. 3200. Yeah. Overclocking starts at 3466. That's what this OC stands for. I would try to stick to whatever's not overclocked, just so that you're at, you know, this is a pretty cheap motherboard. So when you have a more expensive motherboard, you can kind of go a little higher on the RAM. You can go into the overclock series and it'll probably be fine. But you shouldn't waste money on higher RAM on a lower end motherboard. It just doesn't make any sense. So at this point, I'm just going to go to the max that it has for memory type, which is 3200. So I'm going to pop over to my other tab, you know, keeping this one open just because I'm going to come back here for reference. I'm going to look up RAM at this point. So let's open up, see now, that's called desktop memory. So it's a little confusing, but click on desktop memory. I only choose certain types of RAMs that I like. The reason why I'm very picky about my RAM type is because I've had a lot of problems in the past with RAM not being compatible with the motherboard manufacturer saying that it's compatible, and then it's not compatible. So this is one of those types of things that I just stick to brand only, and I usually choose Corsair or Crucial, or Kingston is good too, but Kingston's kind of not really in the game anymore. So if you go to Corsair right now, that's usually my favorite brand at this point for this. So I would switch this to lowest price. I choose the Vengeance memory. I just like Vengeance memory. It's not very flashy. There's no RGB on this or anything. But if you want RGB, I'm not going to stop you. You know what I mean? You can spend some extra money and get RGB if you want on this. By the way, the price to the difference for RGB is, you know, you're not really talking that much of a difference for this type of thing. So maybe about another $10 or $11, you're getting yourself into RGB RAM if you really want to. If you decide on a case that has a window and you really want that RAM, you can come back here and just purchase that one. It's kind of the same speed. It should be the same speed. 3200 C16, 3200 CL18. So little difference, but if you want the RAM that has colorful RAM, go for it. If you don't, then, you know, if you don't have a window, don't waste money on RGB because no one's seeing it. So we're gonna do a non-RGB build, but at the end of this, I'm gonna go back and switch some components around to show you a price difference. So let's reserve this one, which is two 8 by 16 gigabyte sticks. So 16 gigabyte total, 2 8 sticks. DDR4 3200 C16 dual channel memory. You want to have dual channel memory for DDR4. If you are buying DDR5, you don't need to worry about dual channel because dual channel is built into the way the RAM works. So you don't have to worry about that, but for DDR4, you should populate in pairs. So if you have 16 gigabytes of RAM, you should have 2 8s. If you have 32, you'll have 2 16s. and from there on in. Now, 16 gigabytes of RAM right now is kind of my minimum for RAM. I don't really like to step any lower than this. You could do 2 4s, but for the price difference, it's probably like 20 bucks. You're not saving much. So I would recommend you go to the 16, and you're gonna really, you cut your performance in half because of that RAM being cut down. So let's reserve this. All right, next one. We're gonna go back to the motherboard for a second. Now that's RAM, so we're gonna move on to the hard drive. And at this point, you've got some options for hard drives. This motherboard happens to have an M.2 socket. It happens to have SATA ports. It happens to have, that's it. So you get a choice of M.2 or SATA, which is not bad. The only reason why I'd go back to SATA is if you're gonna go to a spinning rust drive. And if you go to a spinning rust drive, that's only going to be probably for space reasons only, because SSD and NVMEs, the prices have come down drastically. So your price per gigabyte is still cheaper to go with mechanical, but if it's going to be your boot drive, okay, I recommend an SSD or an NVMe drive at that point. If you're going to have a gaming drive that has like all of your game assets, or in other words, the game loaded on it, you could go with spinning rust. I keep calling it spinning rust. You could go to a mechanical hard drive for that. If you go to a mechanical hard drive, that's okay. You know, you don't have to use that. I just don't recommend a mechanical hard drive for your main hard drive that you're going to boot off of, because you'll see that performance drop way down, like drastically. You're talking more than half, you know, exponentially less. So stick with M.2 for now. We have a 2280 socket, so that's the most common one. We're going to go with that. It's an M.2 socket 3, M key, that's fine, whatever. So we're looking for a 2280. We're going to go over here. We're going to go to products, PC parts. We're going to go to storage, internal SSD storage, internal hard drives. Got to go internal SSDs because it's probably labeled SSD. Yeah, here we go. So this is an SSD, which is technically an NVMe drive. It still says it right here, NVMe. NVMe is the one that looks like a chip like this. If we scroll, we'll probably find one. Here we go. That's a regular SSD. That's a SATA connection drive. If you're unsure, you could just populate by M.2. M.2280, probably this one. M key. Yeah, M key. So if you populate by that first, you can easily just get all the M.2 drives. So let's break that down, and let's go to lowest price, even if that's probably no reason to do that. What I usually like is of certain brands here again. I kind of like Samsung, Western Digital, Crucial is good. We have any other ones? There are Intel ones. I'm not a very big fan of the Intel memory. I've had issues. So any type of hard drive here, I'd probably recommend, you know, Samsung, Western Digital. You have Inland. Inland is not a bad brand either. If you want to save some money, you can go with Inland. Inland is usually cheaper. It's a brand that usually you only find at MicroCenter. I don't think I've really seen Inland anywhere else, maybe on Amazon, but you're not going to really find it pretty much anywhere else. Warranty-wise, if you want a drive that's not going to fail on you and have problems, I'd probably recommend either Western Digital or Crucial, or even a Samsung. So let's go Crucial. Let's also go Western Digital. And you can check more than one brand. It'll you know, filter and sort. And at this point, we're just going lowest price. I'm just going to do a 250 gigabyte drive. That's probably way too small for most people. Actually, you know what? Let's go 512. 500 or 512. Now, there's also, you're going to see a lot of, okay, here's where it gets a little confusing, because you see that these two look kind of the same, which they are kind of the same. But there are some differences here. So, you know, Crucial, obviously, it's a 500 gigabyte. Western Digital says 250 for this price. That's one difference. The second difference is this is also PCI Express 3.0, and this one is PCI Express 4.0. 4.0 is newer, it is faster. You're going to get much more quicker reads and writes. Now, this kind of goes back to your motherboard. If your motherboard supports 4.0, then just choose 4.0 because it's going to be quicker for you, right? But you're going to be spending more money on it. As you can tell, you're getting half the space but you're getting a faster drive for $1 more, but you're also getting half the space compared to this one. Now, if you're building for price, go with PCI Express 3.0. A 4.0 slot will still work with a 3.0 drive, so it really doesn't matter too much. We're going to go with a 3.0 just to save some money here and reserve this. But in normal aspects, if you're going for performance, you're going to want to go 4.0 at the current time. So let's close that. Okay, we go back. So that's the hard drive now. If you need another drive, you can mix and match. You could put an NVMe drive and you could put a SATA drive in there. So if you really wanted to, you could add 4 SATA drives right here if you really wanted to add to this entire machine and add more hard drive space. This is, again, up to you on what you're going to be saving. If you're doing a lot of video editing, if you're doing a lot of games take up a lot of space. If you're doing anything with Photoshop where you're taking a lot of photo editing and stuff like that, you'll want a little more space. Now, this is up to you at this point to say, how much do I want to spend on this additional space? Now, since SSDs have come down in price, I would recommend that you go to internal SSD storage again, and then choose, if you want to get some cheaper stuff, you want to go down to 2.5-inch form factor. And that's going to give you all of the SATA, small SATA connection drives. These are still very fast. Still, per gigabyte cost is still less than an NVMe, but not as less as a mechanical drive. So the mechanical drive is going to be your cheapest option. That's going to give you the most amount of space for the little amount of money that you're going to spend for it. The big difference is SSD is still very close to an NVMe speed. Now, I say close in the meaning of like it's half the speed of an NVMe, but it's more than double the speed of a mechanical drive, okay? So if you really think about it this way, I would recommend you go this way. If you don't need to save that much data, you can go with like a 1 terabyte extra, drive just to add some extra additional space. Now, that's for maybe a gamer. Now, if you're doing a lot of video editing and you're going to need a lot of storage, this is probably not your way to go. Probably the better way to go is to get a spinning drive, because the spinning drives are going to be a lot less expensive. I'm going to pop another window here, and we're going to go over to internal hard drives, and that's going to be your regular standard spinning drives, okay? Mechanical spinning rust drives. So at this point, if you've noticed, the price goes way, way down. So if you go back to here, $104 gets you only 1 terabyte, which is still pretty good, but it's 6 gigabits per second, but it's only 1 terabyte. Now, if you go over to the hard drive section for this is a really high-end drive for that. It's 154 and you get 4 terabytes. Now that's a crazy drive. You probably don't even need to go that crazy. You could go to lowest price, and then switch it up to 4 terabytes. Where are you? 4 terabytes or higher. And if you noticed here, you can get a 5400 RPM drive, which is really slow. And you can get it for less than $100. It's under $67.99. So you're looking at the difference between these two, and then you're saying to yourself, well, Brian, which one do I go with? It depends on what you need to store, how much you need to store, and how much money you need to be able to throw at this to make that work. Now, if you're doing video editing, you're probably best to use one of these drives because you can have more space for less money. I would probably not recommend something like in a green drive. I'd probably recommend it in something like in a red drive. For Western Digital, that's Western Digital Red. The reason why I don't recommend the green series is not made to run 24/7. The red drives are more made to run 24/7 and save data to and write and erase to a very often amount of time. The green ones, you're not saving much anyway, and honestly, it's not a great drive. I've had a lot more defective green drives than anything in the entire options. Blue drives kind of fit like that under Western Digital side. So if you're going Western Digital, go red. If you're going Seagate, it's also red, but it's just called Iron Wolf. They just kind of kept the same marketing, and they're kind of playing off of that. So if you want, you could also go Iron Wolf. Iron Wolf is usually a little more expensive, and it is. It's a few dollars more. It's a little bit faster RPMs, so you're getting a little bit faster, quicker drive for that price. Personally speaking, Western Digital and Seagate are very close to the same, in my opinion. So, you know, this is really about your experience with them over mine, but my experience, they're both pretty much in the same category. I'm okay with the WD drive just because if I'm not saving much to it anyway, the difference in the speed differences are not going to make much of a difference to me. It's not worth the price difference of a few dollars. But if you're a big Seagate fan, go Seagate. You know, you're not really changing that much in price anyway. Now, I'm just using 4 terabytes as an example, but you can also go crazy here, and you can go a lot more than 4. You can go all the way up to, well, there's 12 terabytes and more now. So 16, I think, is the max right now as of recording. By the way, all of this is as of recording, guys, because this stuff will change. 16 terabytes, I'm sorry, is the largest drive, I think, right now. Do I see anything bigger? No. No, 16 terabytes looks like it's the largest. So if you really need to, you can go all the way up to 16 terabytes. Now, if you're going to go crazy, like you need a lot more storage than 16 terabytes, that's not going to be really covered in this video, or live stream. But basically, if you need a lot more than that, you're going to need to go to a NAS, you know, a network attached storage, or something that is dedicated for just storage. Okay, and that's going to be a different live stream or maybe a different video that will go over all of those explanations of different types of NASs and different types of additions to that. But for most people, 1 drive, maybe 2 drives is going to be really all that you're going to need. Most of these motherboards support only, you know, this one happens to support 4, but most motherboards have like 2 SATA on there now and 1 NVMe. The more expensive you go, they usually have a few more ports. Another thing that's over here, which I just noticed, is also RAID support. I don't want to go into RAID, but honestly, we haven't done a hardware RAID in a long time. We've actually been replacing with ZFS. So it's, again, something that's for later, but that's really for your NAS and stuff like that. You won't really get to that. Okay, someone just mentioned, why not the cloud? There's a little problem with the cloud. The cloud, for storage, if you need a lot of storage and you're saying, oh, I want to store my family photos on the cloud, that's okay. You know, again, we're talking small amount of storage. But when you have video, you're not going to sit there and upload your entire video catalog. I'm sorry, but that's going to take a very long time. And then on top of it, if you need to edit that video, you have to download the video back to your main machine to edit it and then bring it back up again. So there's going to be a lot of back and forth with that. The cloud is more expensive per storage. Even if you go with Google. Let's just take a little sidebar here and let's go look at Google. Actually, you know, no. Let's not even look at Google. Let's look at Dropbox, because Dropbox is more what people usually use. All right, and I think they're a little less expensive. Find your plan. Okay, so build yearly. If you wanted to use the cloud for individuals or households or solo workers, actually they broke this down a lot better than it used to be. So let's go with the lowest one. That's only 2 terabytes of data, and you're paying $10 a month for that storage. Okay, so I'm going to bring up the calculator just to make sure that I am not wrong, because my math sucks. So I'm going to just do $9.99, right? And then times that by 12 months. And that is $119.88 a year for your information to be stored in the cloud. How much is a hard drive? Nowhere near that. So at the first year, at the first year for a 2 terabyte drive, let's go to a 2 terabyte here. That's a 1. This is a 2 terabyte right here. And this, by the way, this is SSD storage. So this is the faster, more expensive storage. And you're still a year and a half, maybe a year and 2-3 months. You're already at the cost of an internal drive. So in my opinion, this is a lot less expensive. Plus the data is right here, so you can use it. If it's in the cloud, you have to download it. Now Dropbox doesn't tell you, but most of the time with Dropbox, you have to click on the file, and then it downloads the file, and then you can edit the file, and then it uploads back to the cloud. Now don't get me wrong, Dropbox is pretty simple that way. What happens if your hard drive fails? You still have to have backup. By the way, Dropbox doesn't eliminate backup. Just to let you know, Dropbox does not back up your data. They don't give a crap about your data. And even if they say they have backup, you know how much backup they're backing up and how easy it is for them to lose your data? So it really depends on your trust here with them. But let's bring this up. Let me see what they say about backup, unless I am wrong. It says Dropbox backup. Automatically back up your computers. You could back up your computers to Dropbox, but it doesn't say they're backing up your data in the cloud. So let's go down further. Rewind 30 days of retention. You're paying for that 30 days of retention, by the way, a lot. Family room, Dropbox paper. Again, this is not really a case for backup. You can, you know, what happens if the hard drive fails? You call Brian. Yeah, you could. The only problem is I'm probably going to still recommend you to go to a larger facility because to get that data, it's a little more expensive. Now, Dropbox, if Dropbox loses your data is gone, you know. There is no option to get it back because you don't own those hard drives that you're storing on, you know. But does Dropbox eliminate backup? No. You really should have a backup of your entire catalog, whatever's online. Just because I've had clients lose stuff off of Dropbox. And it was a nightmare to get back. Now, not just Dropbox, okay? I'm not picking on Dropbox because Dropbox is one person, you know, one company, I mean. Google is another option. You know, Google Drive is also available, right? Google Drive. You know, Drive Personal Cloud, right? You could do this, you know. This is the same kind of concept as Dropbox. They give you a few more features, but same difference. You know, personal no cost is 15. First of all, they give you 15 gigs for nothing. But they charge you $12 a month. See, it's more expensive. But, you know, we're back to this thing of you're trusting an online company. You don't have physical access to that drive. You don't know what's happening with it over there. You're taking a very big chance. And I've had stuff being missing off of these types of services. Dropbox. Google Drive, OneDrive, we've had problems in the past. It's not like it's just that one company, by the way. There's other issues. Do they really care about your data, though? You know, you have to read the terms of service and get kind of really deep into this to find out that they don't give a shit. And that, excuse my language, but they don't, you know? So they don't care if they lose your data or they lose somebody else's data, because at the end of the day, you're paying them for a monthly service, and they have rollback options and stuff like that, but that's only if it syncs. It's only if it makes it to the cloud. There's a lot of weird stuff going on here. They're not a backup company, even as much as Dropbox says, oh, you could back up your stuff to the cloud. That is true, but they don't have a backup piece of software. It's just making a copy of whatever's in your Dropbox. It can't duplicate your entire computer. It can't run, you know, logs. It won't let you know that it's backed up. It just, you hope it works, you know. You're taking a big gamble with your data, in my opinion. I believe that you really should have it local. And it is cheaper. It is a lot less expensive to have it running locally. Can a hard drive fail? Yes. But that's what you should still have backup for. That's why you should have iDrive or something else running backup, Carbonite, whatever you want to, you know, whatever you want to use. Personally, iDrive works better. We went over this in a backup area. If you really want to go back to that video, you can replay that. But this doesn't replace, cloud stuff doesn't replace your backup. Even if you have cloud service. I have companies that use all the cloud all the day long, but they still download their entire cloud every night. They're still downloading it to these mechanical drives. Because what happens if, even better, what happens if Dropbox doesn't exist tomorrow? That's happened. There was another company, I think it was called Box or something, that actually closed up its doors and nobody could get to their data. How scary is that? Take a heated warning that you don't control that. That's something in the cloud. And by the way, it's not cheaper. You see, it's not cheaper. You're paying for that, that luxury of putting it in the cloud, but is it really luxury? Because now you're using a lot of your internet speed to download your data that you have somewhere else, so. All right, we're off tangent. So let's get back to the hard drive information. But hopefully I answered your question about the cloud. It's not the perfect solution. And by the way, even if you have Dropbox, you still need local storage too. So that's another problem because Dropbox, you still need to be able to download that file. So you need to still have that space available here, and you need to have it available in the cloud. So there's a little bit of weirdness going on there, and you are paying more for that weirdness. Now, if you want to use the cloud for backup, great. That's another medium to back up to. But again, when you're choosing your backup solution, you should have a full solution. Logging, everything, all the way through. So hard drives, again, back to hard drives, you can basically get different types. Again, it depends on what you're storing. If you're storing a lot of stuff like video or a lot of audio is pretty large, video is pretty large. Images can be large. If you're a photographer and you're shooting a lot of raw, raw formats could be very, very large. You're talking megabytes big, just one photo, and if you've ever seen a photographer take pictures, they take a lot of photos. So yeah, if you're at raw, you could be at you could be in gigabytes really, really quickly. So in that case, I recommend the spinning drives because the spinning drives are going to have the most amount of space for the least amount of cost. But again, we're back to backup. You should have another backup of that drive just because mechanical does fail more often than your SSD or your NVMe. So, but you can see the price difference. You're talking, 12 terabytes of data for under $300. Actually it's under $250. So it's under $250, you get 12 terabytes of space. That's a lot of space. Will you use that space up? Yeah, probably if you're in video editing or if you're in photos, yeah, sure, you're gonna definitely use that space up. But again, when you get to this point, when you get to 12 terabytes and stuff like that, you're kind of entering into the NAS category and you're really not entering into just a workstation. A workstation really, you wouldn't keep 12 terabytes of data on a regular workstation, or you shouldn't be, unless you are backing that up constantly. And backing up 12 terabytes is not cheap to the cloud. Backing it up to an external drive, not expensive. It's still expensive, but it's not that expensive. All right, moving on to the next category, GPU. Do you need one? And multi-monitor support. So if you're using a GPU, you want to basically, this is where you can spend a lot of money really quickly, and you may not need to use that kind of money. You may not need to spend that kind of money. It depends on the situation. Now, this processor that I have does not have built-in graphics, so I need a GPU. And that's why I chose it, because I want to show the difference of buying a GPU versus not buying a GPU. So let's go over and let's try to buy a GPU at this point. Oh, did I select the drive? Let me see. Did I select a drive? Yes, I did. Okay. So we got RAM, we got a motherboard, got CPU. Okay, now we're back on track. Let's go to getting a graphic card. So go to graphic cards. Yeah, this is going to be one of those areas where there's a lot of gray area. And it really depends on what you're doing. Now, if you're playing video games, and there's one situation here when you're playing video games that you're gonna have to say to yourself, yeah, I'm gonna have to go with probably something medium to high end at least to be able to get most of the popular titles out there. Again, it goes by the titles that you want to play. If you are playing something like Fortnite, you don't need like a really high-end GPU. You need something kind of in the middle area, and it's fine. But if you're going to be playing something like Cyberpunk or whatever, you know, that's really high-intensity graphics. What's that other one? Valheim, I think it is. It's got really high-end graphics that requires some other stuff. Again, it depends on the title you're playing. I would check for the title that you're playing for currently right now, and then to future-proof yourself a little bit, go one step up from that graphic card recommendation. Because if you don't go to the recommendation based off the software, go to the recommendation based off how you want to play the game. So in other words, if you want to play Cyberpunk, let's say, with high-end graphics, you're going to need something in that 3080 Ti, 3090 to really experience every bit of the graphics, you know, all the RTX, everything else on it. But if you're okay with medium, you don't need something that high end. You can go a little less and it'll be perfectly fine. So again, I just brought up the graphic cards page right now, and the most popular one right now is almost $1,000. So, you know, you're talking a 3080 Ti. 3080 Ti right now is, I mean, the prices have come down a lot over the last few months, but do you really need a 3080 Ti? Probably not. You probably can get away with something a little less. You know, again, this really depends on what titles you're playing. Your graphic card will also dictate your power supply. So just keep that in mind. If you spend more on your graphic card, you're probably going to need a larger power supply. So you have to equate for that. Don't just say to yourself, well, Brian, I'm going to go buy a $1,000 graphic card and put a 500 watt power supply in there. It ain't going to work. It's not going to even turn on. You know what I mean? So you're not going to have enough power to power that entire GPU. So that's going to be a real problem. Actually, I lie. It may turn on. It's not going to rev up because your power supply is going to give out before it even reaches that. If it even powers on. I think most of the new ones actually check to make sure that you have enough startup voltage. So anyway, long story short, I mean, graphic cards have finally come back into stock. So 3080 Ti is not unreasonable, but it is also still like $1,000. I would probably still stick in the category of a 3070 if you can, you know, stomach it without having to worry about like too many high-end graphics. Because if you look at the price difference, you drastically drop off when you go to a 3070. Now, don't get me wrong, these specs are totally different. A 3070 is a lot less RAM. It is a lot less CUDA cores and stuff like that. You could sit here all day. Just make sure that your game supports that graphic card. Now, if you're playing games, I would recommend NVIDIA. Now, that's at the time of recording because things may change. NVIDIA just seems to be better written for most titles. So if you're not sure what titles you're going to be playing, go with NVIDIA, go with something like a 3080 or a 3070, and just call it a day. You know, 3070 you will save a lot of money, but you are going to be dropping performance a lot. So you may not play some of those games at the highest detail rate. All right. So in short, that's gaming. Now, if you're going to go desktop and you're just going to be using desktop applications like video editing software, Adobe, Premiere Pro, DaVinci Resolve, any of those types of video editing software, you are going to basically not have to go this high. You could get away with something from an AMD side and save some money. So let's switch over to AMD if they have it on here, hopefully. Radeon. Where are you? 1600 at XT, there's 7 of them. A little bit, yeah, that's still a little high. Yeah, this is kind of all over the place in pricing, but if you noticed, you get more VRAM, RAM for the GPU, okay? That's what VRAM is, video RAM. So you're getting more VRAM, and you want more VRAM for something like video editing or rendering. If you're going to render out like a lot of stuff, the VRAM does help a lot more with keeping those textures already inside the VRAM, so it doesn't have to keep swapping that in and out. So that's going to be a little bit better and more efficient for you. And the price, again, we're at $639. That's still a little high. That's a refurbished. Not a big fan of refurbished, but you know, sometimes if you want to save a little bit of money, you can do that. Yeah, this is still a little bit expensive. You could also go a little bit less than 6900 XT. You know, if you're doing video editing and you're just not doing like 8K video editing or something, you're just doing like 4K or 1080p, you can definitely drop down. You don't have to keep this such a high performance here. So 6800 XT, it's a little drop down. You could also see that some of these things are ridiculously overpriced. Be careful. You know, that means there's something weird going on here. I would not look at that. I would try to figure out something. You know, if one card to another card you should see a medium. If something is too low, if that price is way too low, you ever heard the expression, if the price is too good to be true, it probably isn't? That's where you're at with that. It probably isn't. Now, I'm not saying everything, because some people just want to get rid of their older card. They may want to sell it or whatever. You can take that chance and deal with that. But you're probably going to end up finding used for that price. Now, I'm talking new in the box, $599 new in the box, power color. I kind of like MSI better, but, you know, just because the way the boards are designed are a little bit better. But power color is okay too. And, you know, if you want to save some money, you can go that method. But that's only if you're, you know, if you're not doing games. If you're doing games, by the way, you could still do AMD, and your card will probably still perform fine. But do realize most games are still written for NVIDIA. For some strange reason, it seems like NVIDIA has a better graphic card driver, or maybe compatibility between the two, where AMD just does not have that graphic card driver yet. It's gotten a lot better over the years, though, and it's gotten very close. But I still feel like when I go to Steam or something and I run it on an NVIDIA graphic card, I feel like the graphic card is performing better. I don't know if it really is 100%, because I don't sit there and do benchmarks for, you know, a graphic card, because a benchmark is fake. You know what I mean? Unless you're running a game and you actually show a benchmark in the upper corner, but that also takes up some resources. So, but just overall experience, it feels a little smoother. Now, again, if you want to save money and you're not doing games and you're only doing productivity, then go with the AMD. Save some money and don't waste money on that. Power-wise, they're about the same. You know, you're going to still need a higher end power supply either way. But let's go back to NVIDIA for gaming. Let's just do gaming for right now, because that's what most people usually can attest to. And by the way, it still fits into, the gaming side still fits into productivity. So you could still use this NVIDIA graphic card, not just for games. You could use that for regular productivity. Now, one little word of advice: if you are doing productivity, do double check that your program that you're using on a daily basis does support that type of graphic card. If they're recommending NVIDIA, you're taking a chance and a gamble by going AMD. Okay? The opposite way, if they're recommending AMD, then you're taking a chance by going to NVIDIA instead. So again, look at your specs, you know, see what's going on. Most video recording stuff and video editing doesn't really matter. You know, either one works just as good. But DaVinci Resolve especially, DaVinci Resolve is like an amazing video editing software compared to Adobe Premiere Pro. Adobe Premiere Pro, I'm saying it wrong. Adobe Premiere also has some weird quirks with certain graphic cards, so you have to be kind of very specific on that one. But they're okay with most, so you shouldn't have too much of a problem. So let's go crazy, but not too crazy. Let's actually do a 3070, because that would be more common sense with this type of build. So let's reserve that, put it in our cart. By the way, this isn't reserved until we go into the full shopping cart. We're not buying this whole thing, so. But I wanted to get you guys a total so you get an understanding. So let's say 3070, that's actually a really high-end card. So let's go back to it for a second after we added it, and we want to check the specs and see. Now in here, it's going to probably tell you, recommended power supply. Here we go. So it says 650 watt power supply. That's the minimum that it's recommending. Now let's go over to power supply. Let's open up, actually we don't need the motherboard anymore because we got all the motherboard components. So we're gonna now open up power supplies. Okay, now it said 650 watts, right? So what we're gonna do is we're going to search for 650 watts and plus. So that's and of course, the wattage doesn't break down that way. It breaks down to 600 to 700. So let's do 700 and above just because I want to make sure I meet the requirement. Okay. And now here we come down to something that Brian will probably school everybody on right now and probably doesn't understand the difference between these power supplies. They all look the same. The wattage looks the same. There are a lot of internal differences. Personally, I shop by brand because I know I have tested these brands, and by testing, I don't mean like a high-end power supply tester, okay? I test the simple things. Does the thing short out? Does it shut off? Does it complete a test? That's what I test. I don't test with like these expensive power testers and all this other stuff. You don't need that on a regular basis because you're not going to reach those types of parameters every day. And we also kind of have to rely a little bit on the manufacturing side because those testers are like thousands of dollars, maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending upon the one that you buy. I don't have the patience for that, so we basically test on the basic mirror medium of shorting it out, double checking to make sure the power supply shuts off, crossing over the 12 volt rail to see if that makes a mistake and it does power off. The safety features are there. That's what I'm looking for, is the safety features. Does this thing catch on fire if it makes a mistake? You know, a good example, Gigabyte had a bunch of power supplies that were, I don't want to say catch on fire, but they were definitely giving a spark off and then blowing out. They did blow out though. So honestly, it could start a fire, it may not start a fire. It shouldn't have sparked. That's definitely a thing. But stuff happens. These manufacturers also do make changes. So again, I go shop by brands. I don't really shop by Gigabyte very often. I usually do EVGA, I do Thermaltake, and I do Corsair. That's my big three. If you want the best quality, I recommend Corsair because Corsair has a better testing ability. They also have better numbers that are closer to the actual wattage that your power supply can put out. So let's jump down here and let's select EVGA, Thermaltake, Corsair. You could also do Seasonic too. Seasonic is not bad either, but Seasonic is going to be at your higher price range, and you're not going to see as much stock on them because they're not in every computer place because they're a little bit more higher priced. Again, not a problem. The brand is not a problem. It's just finding the brand is a little bit of a difficulty. So in this case, you'll see also Seasonic only has one in stock, like one model type, you know, compared to all of these others. So I've already found 9 items. Great. EVGA is probably going to be your lower expensive cost one, but let's go lowest to highest, even if this is probably a mistake. Do not go lowest to highest. You do not want the cheapest power supply on here. First of all, the cheapest power supply probably can't handle your graphic card that you just selected. So even at 700 watts, let's go to the Thermaltake to prove a point here. This is a $59 power supply. This is a little too cheap in my opinion. Their Smart Series has had issues, a lot of issues. So you may want to stay clear of this one, but let's click on it anyway, just to show you why I would stay clear of it. Are they going to show you? They don't have the photo. There should be a photo of the actual sticker on the power supply itself, which it does not have. No, of course not. So we're going to have to rely on specs, which probably won't show what we're looking for. Nope, not here. It says wattage, 700 watts. That's peak performance. That does not mean, peak performance meaning like it may not, you could go up to 700 watts, okay? It is rated for 700 watts, but that doesn't mean it can stay continuous at 700 watts. So if you're playing a video game and your graphic card is requiring 650 watts, okay, and you have a processor that also requires maybe 100 watts of TDP, which is basically 100 watts of power, this is going to put you over. So you'll be into 750 watts, which you won't be able to handle. Now, I'm probably not going to recommend a 700 watt power supply for this on a Thermaltake, because let's look up Thermaltake's actual wattage. 700 series, 700 watts. Is there a this is manufacturer part number? Here we go. What I do is I go back to the manufacturer's website. So I search it. I find Thermaltake, because that's the manufacturer. I go to their site, which is going to take forever to load. There it goes. Okay. Seriously? Off. Okay. So are we going to actually give the specification? Here we go. So here's the sticker that would be normally on the side of the power supply. If you look, it says 700 watts. Continuous power, right? This is not what I go by. I go right by to this one, which is the 12 volt rail, the plus 12 volt. And it basically says max output is 648 watts. So that's your max that can go to your graphic card or your peripheral or anything else like that. So you're really, really close here. Yeah, your graphic card is 650, right? But you just bought a 700 watt power supply thinking it's a 700 watt power supply, but it's actually 2 watts underneath what you actually need. So this is why I wouldn't recommend this situation. Now, let's go back. Now, this is Thermaltake, okay? So let's go back. Let's take a look at EVGA. Yeah, if it's over the, someone asked, so if it's over the system, I guess you mean over the system power, it shuts down. If it's over the system power, it's not just going to shut down. You could damage it. You could damage your power supply. You could damage your graphic card. You could damage a lot of things if it goes over. If your power supply is not wired correctly, which some of these manufacturers do not manufacture power supplies correctly, and they have that issue, and it could actually damage more parts. So that's why I'm saying shop by brands and shop by actual output. Now let's go to EVGA for a second. Let's bring up their sticker. Okay. So if you look at their sticker, let's bring this all the way up. Can we zoom in here? Let's see. Zoom? No. Why would we be able to zoom? That would just make a lot of sense. All right, MicroCenter doesn't zoom in. Hopefully you guys can see this. So your continuous output power is 750 watts. Again, this is laid out, if you've noticed, every manufacturer for power supplies has the same sticker. It's laid out pretty much in the same areas. So you can easily look it up. So if you look here, now it says 744 watts. Look at the difference. That gap is not that much for an EVGA compared to a Thermaltake where that difference was unacceptable. This is acceptable. This power supply will still work for you because your highest peripheral is going to be within that range. Now, there is an asterisk here, okay? The only time this is an asterisk is if you're going to be doing stupid things like, you know, Bitcoin, not going to say Bitcoin mining because that's not relevant. Let's say you're going to do any type of cryptocurrency mining, okay? I'm just going to leave it out there because not everything does GPU cryptocurrency mining. But let's say if you're doing that. This is not for this. This is only for people that are doing regular systems. If you're doing cryptocurrency and all that stuff, you got to buy a much better power supply because you're going to have to contain all of that power that you're going to be running out for those graphic cards, and that's going to cause a lot of wasted electricity and heat and all that stuff. You know what? We're going down the rabbit hole. The point is, just, you know, ignore this aspect. You have to go a lot higher than this. But if you're just doing normal gaming and you're just choosing that graphic card and you're choosing this power supply, it should work with no problem because you're at 750 watts continuous, 744 on the 12 volt. That's plenty to cover your 650 watts that you need for the graphic card. So you should be no problem with this power supply. It's also an 80 plus bronze. Nowadays, a lot of things say it's 80 plus bronze. To give you a short version of it, that rating is a joke, but it's really about, that rating basically is about when you reach 80% of your entire power supply usage, it starts to save you money at that 80% mark by cutting down some resources and stuff like that. So long story short, most people, you don't shop by 80 plus bronze or platinum or any of that stuff unless you're planning to use more than 80% of the power supply power. Then you can start to say, okay, go to bronze, go to platinum, because then at that point you're actually saving money on your electric bill. But for everyday use, including gaming, I don't see most people hitting that target. So again, it depends. But I wouldn't shop just for a power supply because it says 80 plus gold or bronze or whatever. You can ignore this because honestly, you're probably not going to use it anyway. Should it have some 80 marking? Yeah, you know, to say it's been tested. But then again, during during a lot of the shortages on the supplies and stuff like that, during the supply shortage, a lot of manufacturers changed a lot of stuff without saying anything, and they never retested that power supply, and therefore are in deep trouble for it. And that's why you probably see a lot of YouTubers online doing a lot of tests for power supplies with high-end equipment, because it to prove if they actually still work the way they're supposed to work. But again, we're back to brand, and that's why I kind of stick with the current brands that I like and that I know that haven't really changed anything in the manufacturing process and have been good for a decent amount of time. I also look for something with a good warranty. Power supplies should have a good warranty. This one has a warranty of, anything over 1 year is good. This one has a 5-year warranty. Most good manufacturers are going to have a 5-year warranty. So that's another thing to look at, because your power supply is taking a lot of heat, like it's taking a lot of hits from electricity. I know that we're on Long Island here. So on Long Island, the power sucks. So we end up with a lot of brownouts, a lot of shorts. You know, a system, a power supply that's able to handle it a little bit better will be able to handle it for more years to come. When you see something warranted for 5 years, at least you know you have a power supply for 5 years. And if something goes wrong, you can process it for an RMA and get another power supply with no problem. Does that still negate the fact of UPS batteries and noise filtering and stuff like that? No. A good power supply is not really, you shouldn't be relying on your power supply for that. You should be relying on something before that, which is basically your UPS battery or something like a noise filter. We usually use Wattbox just because we like them, but you can do whatever you want. Protect your investment. Someone says protect your investment. Yes, and that's basically what you're talking about here with power, especially if you're going to run a computer 24 hours a day. Don't be stupid. Put a UPS battery on it. Put a proper filter on it. You know, because your power, you don't know what happens with your power overnight. You don't know what that unless you know where that outlet plugs into. Unless you have a dedicated circuit for that outlet that's on your computer, I still probably wouldn't trust it, because it's hooked up to a panel, and that panel may not be giving out proper power. It may be giving too much voltage or too little voltage. It depends. And if you're in a really old building, you probably have really old wiring, and that's another crapshoot. So I wouldn't trust that. I would always go with, you know, making sure you have a UPS battery, making sure you have some sort of filtering device on there. And by filtering device, I don't mean like a really expensive filtering device. These things cost like, you know, $70 maybe for a really good one. You know, and that one has probably a lot of ports for it, you know, a lot of power plugs. It's really just an advanced surge protector, really, but it has more advanced. I wouldn't want to say surge protector because it really isn't. It's a filtering. There's a difference. There's power filtering, then there's surge protection. Surge protection will block from like high voltage, like lightning strike, you know, something like that. That's probably crazy. Most power strips will not probably protect you from a lightning strike, but I'm just saying high voltage, anything with more than your regular 110 volts that's going through there. It's and the higher amps that are going through there at that time. But power filtering will filter out your power and bring it back down, and it'll also make sure that you're at a nice little level, because with AC power you need to make sure you're in that little, you know, that little sine wave. And if you're keeping that sine wave perfect, that's perfect. That means you're getting perfect power, you're getting non-dirty power, okay? That's, I guess, a news term, because honestly there's no such thing. But let's say there's a dirty power on your outlet, you would have that problem where it could take a power supply or a UPS battery out. Most of the time, if you have bad power, usually you get a sign of a UPS battery prematurely dying on you, because that means something is going up and down too much, and it causes the battery to uncharge and recharge incorrectly, and then the battery dies. That's one way of doing it. There's a lot of other things you can look at. We'll probably have a whole nother series on actually power, because there is so much to go into, and we have run into every situation with power, and it's hard to determine. We're not electricians, so we have to sometimes hire electricians to actually get it proper, or sometimes we could put filtering on to help combat the issue. The problem is the filtering isn't the solution. It's just a band-aid to the solution. So, you know, you really should be solving it at the panel. Anyways, moving on. Power supply, again, there's a lot of options here. This one's modular, which is kind of nice. If you do a modular, just be sure to keep all your cables within the same system. Don't share cables and, you know, switch cables out or accidentally use somebody else's cables or something. Those cables are specific to that specific model. So that's the only bad point about modular. But everything else that's great about it is that it does save you a lot of wiring, because you don't have to plug everything in. You could just bundle it, put it in there, and be done with it. This is kind of, actually I should say this is kind of semi-modular, because it does have cables here, but it's only the cables for your motherboard, I think. Where are you? You're not going to show me a photo, are you? Oh, here it is. All right, so this is basically your motherboard, yeah, your main 24 pin, and then your probably your 12 volt rail on there. You know, that's fine, you know, which is like an 8-pin adapter. But this is, you know, this is for your peripherals and your VGA. Now, obviously, if you were connecting this for real, you would actually connect the VGA connections, because this does require two. Yeah, it requires two connectors here for the graphic card itself. So you would be connecting those two, and you would put it through at that point. So let's add this one to the cost. And you look, it's still not that expensive. You're talking $60, $70 for a power supply. When you really think about it, the other one was $40, but at least this one, you know, is going to work. You know, it's not going to crap out on you like halfway through a game. It's not going to crap out on you. If it even turns on, because honestly, the other one may not even turn on with the power checking now. So yeah, and you're spending $500, almost $600 on a graphic card. Don't cheap out on the power supply with it and blow out your graphic card because of something stupid that you did just to save a few dollars. So power supply is good. Case. Okay, here we come down to the case. Now we're going to have everybody in the world and on chat probably screaming at me, because I think that this is the least expensive category. This is the one that you don't need to spend a fortune on unless you want to, okay? And it comes down to personal preference, all right? I'm not gonna say that I haven't bought a really expensive case. I have bought, and by expensive, I mean, I'm still under $200, because I really don't wanna spend over $200 on a case. But I also felt stupid after I bought it, because I realized to myself, what did I really pay for, you know? So let's go to cases just to bring this up. Now, MicroCenter is going to have probably a decent selection, because the last time I went there was pretty crazy. Desktop cases. NewEgg is probably going to have more choices, but MicroCenter has like a good variety of different types of cases. They also have the one that we usually like, which is the H17 Thermaltake, which is probably going to be the least expensive case on here, or very close to it. Yeah, there's a Thermaltake V100, which is actually the same price as the H17 right now. I would probably go with the H17, honestly, because the H17 is a better build. But $44. So anything under $100 for a case, Yeah, so basically, yeah, for a case you could go, you know, anywhere you want for this. You could go up to like thousands of dollars for a case. Now, I don't recommend that. I recommend that you go with the least expensive, whatever is there is fine kind of case. I'm going to hit reserve now on this one just to go for the hell of it. Okay. They also have the H18, by the way, for a few bucks more, and that has a window if you really want a window. Now, if you want to go a little bit step up, you could go to something with a more fancy window and some more RGB. Go for it. Again, up to you. Now, if you're going to go full RGB and go, and I say RGB, but I mean fully colored fans and all that garbage inside. And I say garbage respectfully because I've built stuff like that. I've got RGB back here. I mean, I'm not against RGB here, you know? It's just that spend it if you want to spend it, but realize that it's not the most important component of your entire build. The RGB is not going to make it go any faster. Even if people, you know, it's a running joke that everybody keeps saying RGB makes it quicker, but it really doesn't make it quicker. It's the same thing, just more colors, you know? So again, if you're gonna put your case on the floor and it's not going to be even viewed, okay, which I don't recommend you put it on the floor anyway, just because of dust. But let's say you're going to put it on the floor because that's the only place you have, right? No one's going to see it. So why spend money on a really windowed case for no reason? By the way, this H17 case has been around for a very long time. I'm hoping that they keep it around. And that's one of the best ones to build in because it fits a full-size graphic card. It fits what you need. It fits the full motherboard. It fits a full-size graphic card from front to back. It has spots for your hard drives and some spots underneath in the back over here. If you want to take a look at those, you can look at any of our previous builds. Most of them will have the H17 on it, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Pretty lights. Oh my God, someone says pretty lights. Yes, it looks pretty, I'll be honest. I mean, I'm not gonna say no. I mean, if you look at this Montec case, yeah, sure. It's got, you know, 4 fans that are really colorful, side window. It's got good air in. By the way, you always want to look at good air intake in the front. It's got good air intake in the front. It's not a bad looking case for the price. Now, my concern though is I look at things like, oh, I don't know, am I going to ruin my fingers today? That's kind of an important thing. I go through there and put my fingers through to make sure that we don't have any sharp edges. Everything's nice and rounded, you know, stuff like that. Now, most cases are rounded nowadays, but if you go to NewEgg, okay, let's go to NewEgg for just a quick sec. I'm not going to go too long into here. But let's say we go to computer peripherals and we go to, no, not peripherals, I'm sorry, computer components, core components. Where are the cases? Computer cases, Jesus. This is a lot more clicking. Okay, so if you go to here, you'll see, well, first of all, the prices are way different. You have Corsair, which is a really expensive case no matter what. But let's go to lowest price, which is probably the worst thing in the world to do. Oh boy. Yeah, I mean, you've got stuff like ITX computer case, mini desktop. It doesn't even have a name, you know? So, you know, Deep Cool, okay, that one might not be too bad. But, oh, it's actually called ITX computer. All right, whatever. But you're looking at the same price, $44.99. You know, and it's smaller and it may not fit anything. That's another problem. Fractal Design. Yes, that is a brand. Fractal Design, I'm not upset about Fractal Design. They make some good stuff. You got a computer case, so let's go check out Fractal Design. Let's click on it. Let's go lowest price because let's be realistic. Yeah, right now the lowest price Fractal Design is the Meshify C that's in stock at MicroCenter. But, you know, NewEgg might have more of that. Fractal Design. Apply. No, lowest. Yeah, Fractal Design also still has like a $44.99 category. Again, this is on NewEgg, but you know, that's not a bad place either to start. Now, Fractal Design does have a window for 54, where I don't know if the other one. Go to Thermal Take. Where was I? Thermal Take. I think the H18 is a little more expensive. it keeps going to most popular. That's annoying. All right, so that's 49. Fractal is 44 with $12 shipping. So, you know, sorry, 54 with $10 shipping is Fractal Design. Now, Fractal Design makes a decent case. They've got a lot more explanation in there. If it's your first time build, Fractal Design might be your better choice because they give you really good instructions in there on how to build. But if you watch one of our build videos, you can do anything. You don't have to do this specific one anymore, you know. But again, Fractal Design is not a bad product either. They've got a lot newer stuff. The Focus G is not bad. It's not great. It's not bad. I don't like the look of Focus G. That's just me personally. I don't like this inner window piece thing. It's a little too cut off. I like more the glass that goes all the way out to the edges. See, the Thermaltake H18, which has tempered glass, by the way. Let's see if we can get a bigger picture here. That's good. Yeah, here we go. So if you look at the H18 has a piece of glass that is concurrent all the way throughout. It's the whole side panel, which I like better, and I like the little power supply shroud over it. That's just a personal preference. Again, this is all personal preference. Fractal Design makes kind of the same stuff in that aspect, but it's more expensive. You're talking a $69 case with $9 shipping. That's the kind of the same thing. A little bit better design, honestly. Fractal Design has a little bit better design. If you notice, the glass slides downwards, not out. So I think that slides downwards, it looks like. Yeah, it slides into a channel and then over. See, it still has these little things to grip onto. But it is a nicely designed case, and it does have a bottom power supply shroud, even if it's kind of like a fake one, but it is there. Yeah, they always have better designs also in the aspect of how it looks and stuff like that. Thermaltake and Fractal, you really can't go wrong. If you want to save a little more money, you can go Thermaltake. If you want to spend a few dollars more and get something that has better instructions, that has a little bit better support for like water cooling and stuff like that, then go Fractal Design, you know. Thermaltake also has some water cooling options, but again, you'll see some issues with this where it comes to like larger radiators and stuff like that. You won't be able to put them on the top. Like this one has a radiator hole here, but it's not fully out to the entire it's only up to here, which is only half the case, where Fractal Design goes all the way up to the top part of the case. So if you want to do, let's say, water cooling, like an all-in-one water cooling unit, or if you want to do custom water cooling, you'd want to be brave to do that. You can do that, but you know, you'll spend a few dollars more in the case just to have that option available. Again, it really depends what you're doing. If you're just doing a basic build, you're using the basic air cooler that comes with it, you could fit into almost anything. So again, you're back to this thing of don't spend more money if you don't have to. Now, if you're going to go water cooling all in one, you're going to do some AIO stuff, you're going to do some maybe custom water cooling, spend a little more money on the case then at that point, just because it'll make your life easier on putting it together. You won't have to worry about like, will this fit? And you'll have to take parts back like 5-6 times, realizing that these radiators don't fit. You're going to have to do a lot of measuring, you have to make sure everything's working together. The build that we're doing today, the Thermaltake H18 is fine, so we're going to put that on reserve. And then we basically are almost done here except for monitor. So let's just take a look at the monitors really quick, then we'll get a full price breakdown. Monitors. It's not really under this, it's probably under electronics. Monitors. Okay, you could do, if you're doing gaming, you could choose gaming monitors, but be careful here. It's going to show you a lot of monitors that really aren't gaming. Probably the default will show up pretty decently, but if you go lowest price, you're going to get real crap. So I don't recommend going too far down. I think 27-inch was actually the breaking point for pricing. 24, 27. Yeah, I'd probably go 27 anyway, just because of comfort of being able to see everything. This is an AOC. Not a very big fan of AOC. Brands that I usually like, Asus, LG, Acer, Samsung. Actually, it's the first few. Asus, LG, Acer, Samsung. Yeah, that's it. I really wouldn't go. Gigabyte's okay. ViewSonic is okay, but they've been kind of lacking. Yeah, I'd probably go with more Asus or LG. LG is more my favorite brand for this because they're less expensive but still high quality. Asus also usually is pretty good in this range, so I'm just going to choose these two. Acer, if you want something really inexpensive, Acer's the way to go. If you don't care about refresh rate, go Acer because you'll save the most amount of money. If you want something medium grade that's going to have decent refresh rate and decent specs, LG is the way to go. If you want the premium, you want to go to Asus because Asus has the higher stuff. You're going to have a higher hertz rate. Now, if you look here, right off the bat, it's already recommending an Asus 24-inch or a 27. And if you look at the price difference, there is a huge price difference here. And you're probably saying to yourself, Brian, why? It's about refresh rate, resolution, and usually the connector type, like what connectors have it on there. Now, there's a lot more other stuff to go in through for a monitor. I'm going only over those three because those three are the most important to me. Everything else kind of is garbage. If it has RGB for backlit for like a monitor, seriously, I have never seen anybody actually use it. There's like a lot of people like that stupid little ring that they put on the back of the monitor. It lights up the wall if it's against the wall. But if you don't have it against the wall, like my monitor is here, not against the wall. I'm not looking at a wall. So, but if you have it like looking out a window, those RGB lights are just being flashed out through a window and they're not going to ever be brought back into the room. So it defeats the whole purpose. So don't waste money on that. Look at more things like, again, refresh rate, your resolution itself, and the port connectors that you need to connect it to your graphic card. So let's go back to the graphic card for 1 second, which I closed it. Why? Why did I close it? Now I can tell what these are, and it kind of has a little D marker for DisplayPort, 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 and one HDMI port. So these are very common. You're going to have DisplayPorts and HDMI at this point. That's the most common as of recording today. Again, as of recording today. So you could also go to the specs. The specs will tell you the same thing down here under ports and connectors. It's going to tell you which type and what version that you're going to have. So you always want to make sure at the current time, again, you have HDMI 2.1 and DisplayPort 1.4a, I think is the most current. So that is the most current going out. So let's go over to the monitor section and we're going to take a look. Now, there's a huge price difference between $149 and $319, almost double, but you are getting 2 inches more screen space, you're getting a higher resolution, you're getting a higher refresh rate. Refresh rate will be more expensive. So the more of a higher refresh rate, you're going to pay more for that monitor. It's a given. It's never the opposite way. I don't think I've ever seen it the opposite way. So the higher the refresh rate, the more expensive this is going to get. Right now, I wouldn't recommend anything less than 144 hertz, which is exactly what they're kind of recommending here. 170 hertz, again, the higher the refresh rate, the better you are. That's going to be marked in hertz, by the way. So you'll be able to choose that information from there. Now, if you scroll down, you'll see that most of these are in 144 hertz. You're probably not going to find anything very, very high end here. There's a 280 hertz. There you go. So there's 280 hertz, 24.5 inch. It's a smaller screen, but if you notice, it's 240 hertz, but it's a 1080p monitor. So that means your resolution dropped down. That's why this price has come down in price to $279. This is also not an ultra wide. Like you see, like here, this is a little more an ultra wide. It is a different, different positioning to make it longer, So, if you like ultra wide, you're gonna, if you're gaming a lot, ultra wide is probably a little bit better, just so you have a little more room. But you don't have to go that way. You can still go with just a full res monitor, and that's fine too. This one also has a different stand. Again, it's things with stand and how the stand is, you can modify that later. You know what I mean? If you really care for like a stand that you want a little higher up, put some books under it. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't make much of a difference. You know, put a box underneath it, it'll bring up the monitor size. If you want, put it on an arm. Even better. If you want to spend some money, put it on an arm and just keep it off the table if you want it all the way off. But yeah, mostly important things are going to be your resolution, your hertz for your refresh rate, and your size of the full monitor. So I would probably stick with the 27-inch just because I enjoy that size. But you could go with whatever size you want. 24.5 is still a very acceptable size. This is not that bad. If you want to save some money, you can go with the 24, and you can go with only 1080p. 1080p is still kind of good for gaming right now. Not everybody's gaming in 4K or 2K or whatever. Now 2K is not really a resolution type, but whatever. We're just going to go with it because that's what they usually market as. But if you're going from 1080p up to 4K, you're going to also spend some money because you're going to a higher resolution, probably higher hertz. I personally would probably pick this one here, which is the 27-inch. 1080p is fine. 280 hertz, which is probably overkill for what I would ever do for gaming. But if it was my computer, this is what I would purchase because it's the right size. The resolution is perfectly fine at 1080p because I don't really play anything that's over 1080p. And I think 1080p is fine at 27 inches. When you start to go to a larger monitor, like 32 or those curved displays, where you go to something crazy, you're going to want higher resolution because the monitor is going to be bigger. You're going to see more of the imperfections at the lower resolution. But the people who make monitors understand that, so they're not going to sell you a 1080p on a huge ass screen. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. So, but the refresh rate here is really awesome, 280 hertz. You really can't get that for under $300. Actually, right at $300. That is a good monitor. Now, is that overpriced? No, I think that's about right. It's about that range because of the hertz, the higher hertz. The higher hertz is going to get you that faster response time. If you're playing a lot of first-person shooters, or if you're doing a lot of renders, you want that higher hertz because that's going to basically make that flash quicker. It's going to refresh quicker in front of you. It's going to display those pixels and change those pixels a lot quicker. You're not going to have that lag or anything like that coming out from the system. Now, there's one more thing about monitors that you might have to be a little bit careful about. This one says G-Sync compatible, but I don't know if it says FreeSync. Yeah, it's only NVIDIA G-Sync. So you got to be a little bit careful here. If you are playing games and you want to use, FreeSync or G-Sync, you got to make sure your monitor supports it, because if your monitor doesn't support that technology, it may or may not work with your graphic card. So that's another feature that some people like to have on. Not everybody, but when you do turn it on, it does make it a little nicer in games, especially if it's a game that has a lot of like landscapes and stuff like that, where you're really enjoying the game and you want to be immersed in the game. You don't want to have this like, cut out flickering or staggering that problem. That's what G-Sync and FreeSync do. It times it so that the entire display refreshes at the right speed, at the correct speed. It may even slow down parts of your display to just make sure that it keeps up with that area. But if you really have a high-end graphic card, you shouldn't have any problem with this. Again, it's a feature that gets turned on video games. You could still play the game without it. You could still use this monitor without it, but you may get what they call tearing. And tearing is when the let's say this image was coming in perfectly aligned with the top image. Sometimes it gets misaligned. And if it gets misaligned, you're going to get this weird cut. And it's going to look like some part has been rendered and some part has not been rendered. It's usually very quick, but if you're playing a very immersive game or a very intensive game, you may feel like it's kind of annoying because it'll start to do this. It looks like a glitch, So Again, something to just think about, but most of the monitors have either NVIDIA G-Sync or FreeSync. Now, if you're doing an NVIDIA graphic card, you want NVIDIA G-Sync. If you're doing a AMD graphic card, you want FreeSync. Okay? That's as simple as that. If your monitor supports both, even better. All right, so we're going with an NVIDIA graphic card, so G-Sync is fine. We're gonna add that to the cart, which I think I already did. All right. That's added to the cart. Now, the only thing that's left over is your peripherals, your keyboard, your mouse, your speakers, okay? Headphones, whatever. I'm not gonna go over this section because that really goes down to really personal preference. Like, the keyboard that I would use is not gonna probably be the keyboard that you probably use. You know what I mean? You may not like any of the keyboards that I like. I like a lot of mechanical keyboards. Some people are okay with keyboards that are just, you know, the regular boring keyboard, you know? That's okay. It's your personal preference when it comes down to it. We're gonna have a whole video and section about keyboards because I'm a very big keyboard snob, so I have bought tons of keyboards over the years. Since I do programming also, I have a lot of keyboards that I've gone through, a lot of keyboards I've broken, a lot of keyboards that I just didn't like and threw them out. I didn't throw them out, I probably sold them off. But either way, keyboards I just didn't like. So this is, again, personal preference. I'm gonna get into a whole nother video about that because that is way long and there are a lot of choices and there are a lot of like differences between the two and stuff like that. If you don't care about that stuff, just buy a cheap keyboard and mouse, it's fine. A membrane keyboard mouse is gonna be your least expensive keyboard, and just buy a regular laser mouse and you're fine. If you really care about any of that stuff, just simply put, if you want really high-end components, you could go more mechanical for keyboards and you can get different switches. If you want a little more performance for your mouse, just look at the DPI and for the dots per inch per, like, you know, as you move the mouse. That's one of the main keys for it, and the amount of buttons that you want on your mouse. If you're doing a lot of MMOs, we were discussing this actually yesterday I was discussing this with one of my other techs yesterday, and they said, oh, you know, I looked at a mouse that had like 30 buttons on it or something like that. It was like insane. And I was just like, when are you going to use 30 buttons on a mouse? And he brought up a really good point. An MMO would be like more of that. Like World of Warcraft would be something like where you would need those buttons. I don't play any of those games, so I really don't know. But again, that's back to your personal preference. If you need a weighted mouse, that's another thing. That's another option too. There's still weighted mice out there, so you can do that too. I'm sorry, Mitchie. Anything else after this? This is pretty much it. This will build your system to this degree. Let's just add a cheap keyboard and mouse just to get a full price because I don't want to say it's not in there. Also, you need an operating system. I forgot the operating system. I always recommend Windows 10 Professional, but you can do whatever you want. Yeah. Look at that. And keyboard and mouse. Do Logitech or something. It's pretty cheap usually. Yeah, I'll do wireless. What the hell? No, actually, those are kind of garbage. Those are really too garbage. Let me go to this, but I think it's MK120s. 50. You know, we'll just add this for now. It's about the same price anyway. But you should get a wired keyboard and mouse. Just because if you're gonna play games, you want, unless you're buying a more expensive wireless mouse, because if this wireless mouse, you're not gonna have the fastest response time from it. It kind of defeats the whole purpose of buying the more expensive machine. So just basically, I'd go with a wired mouse and keyboard if you want to be safe on speed differences. All right, so all of this stuff, which is kind of high-end. This is a medium to high-end build. This is not that cheap. You're talking with tax about $1,611.95. Now, if you're buying from MicroCenter and you're picking it up at MicroCenter, they do have a build option. They charge a little bit more for loading the OS and stuff like that. I'd recommend you build it yourself. I mean, if you're going to go this route, you're going to choose all these components and go through all of this, build it yourself, watch one of our other build videos. It does explain everything. Don't be afraid to build something like this. You know, just be careful as you build it, and you know, go through it. I would, you know, and that's not that bad for a full computer plus keyboard and mouse. I mean, you know, you're talking not that bad with a high-end graphic card too. That's a really high-end graphic card there. Now, if you wanted to save money, you could go back and you can remove the graphic card and you can change the processor. So what I would do is, if you wanted to save money here, and let's say you're just building a computer for your home use, like just like, oh my God, I just gotta go, you go on the web and do something. You know, you don't really need all this expensive stuff. You can remove this graphic card. You can remove this power supply because you can go with a lower power supply. You can remove the processor because you can go with a cheaper processor. And you would remove the monitor because that would be a waste of money. So that brings that down. And now what you need, did I add the case twice? Oh, son of a. All right, let's remove one of the cases. We'll put the H17. All right, so subtract $44 from that last one. But anyway, let's go back to products. Let's go back to the processors. And what you would do is you just go to the AMD processors again. You would choose a processor that has built-in graphics. Now, to figure that out, the boxes usually say like Radeon graphics, or it says Radeon graphics in the text. So to figure that out, you just look for the one that says Radeon. Does it have a breakdown for Radeon graphics? Let's see. That would be easier. Well, first of all, you need AM4. Integrated graphics. There you go. You just say yes. So only 3 of them, so it makes it easier. So now you're going to just choose a little more expensive processor, but you don't have to pay a lot for a graphic card. So you're going to just choose the Ryzen 5 with Radeon graphics. Reserve that. That's an AM4 socket. Should fit that motherboard with no problem. And then what you're going to do is you're going to find a new monitor, because I removed the monitor, and you're going to get a new power supply. Let's do power supply first really quick. You don't need a really expensive power supply at this point. You could probably go with a cheaper power supply, but you can go with, still I'd do probably 500 watts just because that's kind of like the price break right now. And I would do, again, you would choose EVGA, not Thermaltake. Let's do, yeah, let's just do EVGA, it's fine. So 500 watt non-modular power supply, $54.99, perfect. Only one in stock, of course. Check the sticker really quick. Let's just check the sticker and make sure. Okay, it still says 480 watts. That's not that bad off, so that's fine. Let's go with it, reserve it. By the way, this is no graphic card, so your graphic card is subtracted. That's what really requires a lot of the power. So now you can go with a cheaper power supply. And I say cheaper just by money. I don't mean like quality. I mean just money cheaper, you know? Savings. All right, let's say it was savings, because people equate cheap to being horrible. So let's go to monitors. Where was monitors? Garbage thing. It's so hard to find monitors on here. Let's go to monitors. Let's do an Acer monitor because it'll be less expensive. You don't need to go again to such a high price. Let's switch it to low. Don't buy the first. This is like something that's overstocked. Don't buy that. So go to like, I would stick to about a $100 monitor, but look between the $100 monitors. You'll see the difference here. 21 inch, 23 inch, 75 hertz, 75 hertz. Actually, it's not bad for 75 hertz. That's all you really need. This one also has AMD FreeSync, which is still nice because it'll work with your board. So let's go this method just in case. Let's see if there's a reason why. Is this 20? Oh, it's 23. It's a little bigger. Let's go with 23. 109, boom. Okay, let's go back to the cart. I'm going quick because we've already kind of went over the differences. If you really care for the differences, you can go back. Let me just double check, make sure we got everything. Which it looks like we now have everything. Where's the hard drive? Did I just miss the hard drive? Yeah, there's the hard drive. It's small. All right, so now that's a good system for, let's say, a person for home use. And look at the price difference. We jumped down a lot. We would jump down almost $1,000, maybe a little less than $1,000, maybe $900. So you jump down about $900 just by going with a little less stuff. Now, can this machine play games? Depends on the games. You know, again, this could probably play a decent amount of set of games that aren't going to require like first-person shooters and stuff like that. It'll probably be more games that are more like Civilization or SimCity or, you know, anything like that would probably be fine on here. Will this be able to browse the web, save your family photos and all that stuff? Yeah, definitely, no problem. This is something that's just simple. Now, would I still go with Windows 10 Pro? Yeah, I wouldn't save the money and go to Home. Home is cheaper, but Pro is better for a desktop, so don't waste. It's not worth the savings in that. All right, guys, so that's it for system builds. That's all you really have to worry about. You guys might want to stay tuned for when we go up to keyboards next, because keyboards is going to be an interesting one. If you have ever been interested in something that's a little bit better than a crappy keyboard, then you may want to watch that video when it comes out. That's probably not going to be a live stream because there's a lot to go over with keyboards, and I want to kind of keep it quick and fast. But it will explain a lot, and we do read the comments on all videos and as well as live streams, so that's always good. All you need is Tetris, is what someone said. Yeah, so all you need is Tetris. Yeah, Tetris will run on almost anything. Tetris will run on a, you know, John Deere tractor, for Christ's sakes. You know what I'm saying? Like, it will run on anything. You know, that's not a problem. But, you know, I think Tetris even runs on your phone nowadays. I don't think you need a high-end computer for that. But it will run Tetris, yeah. I mean, it won't run Crysis, but it'll definitely run Tetris. Yeah, so basically, we will be having some more live streams coming up there. Live streams are every Saturday at 3:30. For right now, the schedule is still that. The topics are introduced probably around Wednesday of the week, just to give you an idea. If you are not subscribed, you will not get that notification. So be sure to subscribe on YouTube. Be sure to like the video if you got something out of this today. Also, look up the last, you know, if you're going to actually build this thing, look up our other build videos. Those are live builds. I do go into a lot of explanation. If you're going to build one with a graphic card, choose a build that has a graphic card so that you can see how it's put in. Be sure that it's done right. If this is uncomfortable for you, then you don't have to even go to MicroCenter. You can go anywhere. You know what I mean? You could go to like Main Gear or any of those other, you know, manufacturers. You can even come to us for a build of a machine. That's not a problem either. But we usually only build for our local customers. We do not ship. So if you're in Long Island, sure, you know, you can give us a call and we will build you a machine, or we can even, you know, check out your regular business and stuff like that. We do that, all that stuff. We do have business clientels. We're usually business to business. We're not really business to home, but we do make exceptions. So anyways, that's basically it. Again, pricing is not too bad. You probably get a little bit better deal on Newegg, but you're going to end up paying some shipping. You're going to be waiting for the product. If you do have a MicroCenter in your area, you're probably going to get the better deal there. Just because the parts that are in stock, you know that you're buying from MicroCenter. Newegg, you're not really buying from Newegg. Sometimes you might be buying from an alternate. Amazon, I would stay away from for this. I've had a lot of problems with Amazon with this, even punching in proper model numbers. I have gotten a bait and switch on a lot of stuff. Their search is one of the worst, because you could search for one product and it comes up not with that product, but it comes up with 6 other products that are not even exactly the same one. So you're going to drive yourself nuts. I would recommend that you stick with computer manufacturers that are really computer manufacturers, sites that are made for real building of computers. Amazon is not made for that. Amazon's for like if you need to, you know, reorder toothpaste or something. Anyway, all right, that's about it. So please like, subscribe, do all the lovely, wonderful YouTube things you do. If you do decide to dislike, be sure to hit it twice. And we'll see you in the next one. Oh, wait a minute, I didn't do the poll. Shoot, let's do the poll really quick. Let me end it. So the poll has ended, and the poll says, have you ever built a PC? 66% of you said no. 33% of you said yes. That's actually pretty good. And thinking about it, nobody. That's okay. You don't have to think about it. Even if you said no, that's okay. That's fine. You know, maybe you might get into your first PC build. That'll be great. So, yeah, Saturdays, again, Saturday, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's our normal live stream. We will be having another live build, I think, next week. So expect that to also be showing up very shortly. I'll see you in the next one.